Okay, so this is a quick video based on a question that was, how do you install Fusion with, or how do you make Fusion work with Deadline? Okay, so there's a few things we need to kind of look out for. I'm not going to cover how you install Deadline. You can go onto YouTube, there's plenty of videos out there that show you how to install it. What I will say is that if you have any problems, you can install it without the certificates and passwords. It just makes it a little bit easier, but it depends on how secure it needs to be. Okay, so once you've got Fusion installed, what you can do is go up to the top here, and you under tools you've got the super user mode, so you really need to have this on, and then you can go into other options. So switch that on, and then if you go back into tools, come down here, and there should be an option here which is, I think it's configure plugins, so we'll just bring that up. Okay, now if we go down here, we'll go down to Fusion. Okay, so you can see you've got two different types here. So you've got Fusion and Fusion Command. So essentially it works in two different ways. Now you can have, say, let's just say you've got Fusion installed on lots of different machines. Now you could have the original version of Fusion installed on one machine, and then on the other machines you could just have, say, the render node installed, and essentially that will work under the Fusion command line renderer. But say if you don't have the command line render or the Fusion node installed, and it's just a standard version, that will pop up and it will use that version of Fusion, and that's installed under here. So this is the reason why we've got these two different kind of options here. Okay, so depending on how, if you're installing the render node or if you're installing the full version of Fusion, you'll need to set the settings in the correct place here. Okay, but I'm just going to do it on this one for now. So under Fusion, okay, I'm just going to drag this down, and you can see here we've got older versions here, so we want to go all the way to the bottom till we get to the latest release, and I think at the moment you can only see we've got Fusion 16. Okay, now you can see we've got Fusion 16 in here, which is the latest version, but obviously Fusion 17 is out now, and a lot of people are going to be using that. So what you need to do is just go through all this text here. So you don't need to open anything up, but just go in here, and anywhere it says 16, just highlight it and change it to 17. Now it is in a few different places, and you might not get this right the first time, but just make sure you kind of meticulously go through and just make sure you change all the 16s to 17 in here, or whatever version of Fusion it is that you're using. Okay, so you need to change it there, and also if you come down, I think, yeah, so we've got the Fusion 16 renderer executable here. Change the options there, and also I'm not sure if there's any other options here. Yeah, I think it would be good, unless you're using older versions of Fusion, you need to update those, then I think you should probably be pretty good there. Like I say, if you need to update the other version, so if you want to set everything up on the render nodes, then you want to kind of click here, go down and do the same thing. Okay, so you can see again I've set this up under Fusion 16, we've changed everything to 17 there. One way is going up here, go to submit, okay, go to 2D composition, and then go down, hit Fusion here, and you can set all these settings here. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this too much. What I will say is the command line mode here is, again, that's relevant to using the Fusion node on the machine. It's gonna, if you're going to check this command line mode, then it's going to try and use the command line version of Fusion rather than launching the full thing. Okay, I personally have found it's a lot more stable just to kind of have this off and just launch the original version of Fusion, and that's worked pretty good for me. You just need to make sure on here that even though on this version number here, even though it says 16, yeah, so in here, even though there isn't a Fusion 17 option, if you make sure you select 16, that should be good. And again, 64-bit build should be good for that. Select your Fusion composition in here, and then you should be pretty good to go. I mean, the rest is kind of just the generic kind of Deadline settings that you'll need to kind of look up and understand yourself. Okay, okay, so I'm just going to close that down. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is to install the plugin. Okay, and you can do that if you kind of just going to bring this up just one sec. Okay, so hopefully you can see that there. Now, once you've installed Deadline, you can go into the Deadline repository, plugins, Fusion, and then you've got this fusion.py file. So this is Python file that essentially is the installer, or will launch the Deadline installer scripts. So you just need to kind of copy that to the correct location, and you can find the correct location by, if I just click on this here and we go to, say, File, go to Preferences, under Global and Default Settings here, if you go down to Path Map, go down to Scripts, okay, Scripts here, and you just click this. This is going to open up the default location for you to put your scripts in. Now in Fusion you can put scripts in different places, but you know, if you need to find out where you need to put it, launch that, find the path, drop that Python file into there, and then you should be good to go. Also check the documentation as well, because there might be some something specific to where that needs to go. Okay, so just close that down. Once you've got that installed, you can then go up here and go to Script, Deadline Fusion Client. Okay, what it's saying is we need to save this first. Okay, so we'll need to save this, and essentially it's going to give you very similar options to that, you know, to the options that we had before. So you can just kind of launch it from there if you want to. So that's just two different ways of launching that. One of the things that isn't working is when you've got, say, if you're just using one slave here, you're not going to get progress updates unless those sequences are split across different machines. So meaning that, you know, let's just say we've split a sequence over 10 different machines. Like once one task is complete, so say 10% of that's complete, it's going to update, and you're going to see that incremental updates across here. Okay, if you're running on one machine, the updates here are not going to update, so it's essentially going to go from like 0% to 100%. One of the things I've run into previously, this was on Fusion 16, was if you've got when you're trying to launch your job, you might get some errors sometimes where it's trying to launch the render node on, you know, a remote machine or another machine, and it can't launch it because it's already running. Okay, so that then becomes a bit of a problem, because what you would need to do is you'd need to kind of remote into that machine and then clear that executable process down and then launch it again. Generally that fixes the problem. One of the nice things about Deadline is the fact that, like, if you could make a custom executable file, so you know, essentially like a batch file that will just go into the processes and kill a certain process. So you could make a batch file that says, you know, kill, just on each machine, kill X process, and then it's going to allow you to launch it freshly again. So essentially you can drop that in here. That will go to all the machines, it will kill all the processes. So if you run into that issue, it's going to refresh all the machines, make sure that Fusion node isn't running on any machines before you launch the job. So that's just one other thing to look out for. But apart from that, things seem to be working fine.